Everybody knows about the Wooting 60 HE by now because it's been the best gaming keyboard to be released in the past year. But I think that's about to change. This is the Keychron Q1 HE, and it ticks all the boxes that the Wooting keyboard does, like custom actuation points, rapid trigger, and DKS, as well as a high 1000 Hz polling rate. So what makes this better than the Wooting 60 HE? You see, the Wooting has two deal breakers, and it's not for everyone, specifically not for me, because it only comes with a 60% layout. That means that you're losing your F keys, your arrow keys, as well as some important keys like the delete key, which I use a lot. The Wooting also comes only in a wired mode, meaning that if you want to change the device that you're using the keyboard with, you need to also unplug the keyboard and replug it to the device that you want to use, which can get very tedious and annoying if you constantly change from your work and gaming machine. And also it's not good for setups that don't want any cables on their desks, like mine. And that's where the Keychron Q1 HE shines. It comes with a 75% layout, meaning you get to keep the arrow keys, the F keys, and the delete key, as well as some other keys like page up and page down. Not only that, the Q1 comes with 3 ways to connect, one of them being a high polling rate 1000 Hz wireless connection, second one being a Bluetooth connection with up to 3 devices to connect to, and finally a normal wired connection as well if you need it. So that's it then. The Q1 HE is better than the Wooting. Well, yes and no. There's one downside to the Q1 HE, which we'll get to in a second. Let's get to the design of the Q1 HE. You can get this in 2 different colors, a white and green mix or a black and white mix, which I have here. The first thing I noticed when I opened this up was how clean it looked. But then I grabbed it and found the first potential problem with it, being the weight. It is the heaviest keyboard I've ever held. It weighs a whopping 1.7 kilograms. And yeah, if you're an esports player who takes this to tournaments, this might be a deal breaker for you to put it in your bag. But for me, I just leave it on my desk, so it's not really a deal breaker for me. Other than the weight, the build quality on this keyboard is top notch. It is built out of strong aluminum, which makes the entire thing feel sturdy. Whether that's the back or the keyboard deck, you won't feel any type of flexing on this keyboard. The buttons and ports of the keyboard are placed behind the keyboard where you can't see them, but you can easily access them. I like this design choice because it keeps the top of the keyboard very clean and minimal, but then you have all your buttons at the back. The Q1 HE uses 2.0 magnetic Hall effect switches, and the typing experience on the Q1 HE is by far the best I've used on any other keyboard. Maybe that's because I haven't used that many keyboards, but compared to any mechanical gaming keyboards that I've used, this is by far the best. The keys are buttery smooth, yet they still have a lot of feedback and don't go down easily. Here's a sound test. I actually replaced the stabilizer on the bigger keys on the keyboard, and it improved the experience a little bit. Here's how it sounded after the mod. Speaking of stabilizing, this keyboard is actually fully customizable. So if you want to change the case, keycaps, switches, or anything else, you can do that. This is a big deal because if you're tired of the way your keyboard looks or feels, you can easily just change it. So how is the Keychron different from traditional gaming keyboards? Well, with traditional gaming keyboards, you have a specific actuation point. That's when the key gets triggered and registered in the computer. And it's usually something like 4 millimeters within the range. You also have a specific reset point. It's usually when you lift your finger off the key. So I will need to lift my finger off the key completely to be able to press it again. However, with magnetic Hall keys, you can set your own actuation point. So I can set the actuation point to 1 millimeter and I no longer need to completely press the key for it to get registered. You can also set rapid trigger, which means that you don't need to completely lift your finger off the key for you to press it again. So I can just keep spanning the key at the same spot and it will get registered every time. But does this actually make a difference in games? To find out, I continuously changed between a fast gaming keyboard with mechanical switches and the Q1 HE with the magnetic Hall effect switches. In competitive games, the difference was more noticeable, especially in a game like Counter-Strike. In order to land your shots more accurately, you need to counter strafe, meaning every time you want to land a shot while moving, you need to press the opposite side key. For example, if I'm going left by pressing A, then I need to press D to stop the character and then take my shot. Because of the short actuation point on these magnetic switches, this means that I can perform counter strafes faster. And with the rapid trigger enabled, it means I can perform them even more often without needing to release the key. So when I switched back to the mechanical keyboard, it was noticeably slower. Now, I don't think that this feature would help rank up any casual gamers, but I think it's definitely a nice to have. For professional gamers, however, this is a must-have. This could be the difference between landing a shot or missing it, and they could take any advantage that they can get. So for professional gamers, I think that this is definitely an advantage. But what about the casual gamers who don't care about the competitive advantage? Well, I tested this in story-based games and racing games. Aside from a faster input because of the low actuation point, I did not see any real benefit. I was expecting to have full control of the walking speed of my character in game based on the key travel, similar to what console controllers can do for you. But unfortunately, that was not the case. I tried a few different settings and I still could not get it to work. The same thing happened in Forza 5, where I did not have full control over my speed based on the key travel. I'm not sure if there are any mods that will fix this, but it sucks that it is not working natively. Another feature worth mentioning is DKS or dynamic keystroke. Because you can set different actuation points on each key, it means that you can assign different actuation points to different shortcuts. For example, I can set the delete key to be a snapshot button if pressed all the way and be a delete button if pressed slightly. I personally have not used this feature because it's a bit confusing, but for anyone trying to set macros on their keys, I think that this can be very useful. While we're in the app, I should mention that using it was straightforward and great for the most part. I could easily choose the keys I wanted to set custom actuation point for and enable rapid trigger if I wanted to. There is even a little demo switch that shows you how your custom key settings would work in practice, which I thought was very handy. My only complaint about the app is if you don't connect it with a wire, you cannot really access any of the features that it provides. I don't know if it's just with my unit or this is just how it works, but yeah, definitely a downside. So as you can see here, if I unplug it from the keyboard, then it just gets disconnected. Other than that, once you connect it to your keyboard, the app works well for the most part. I think that the Keychron Q1 HE is a better keyboard than the Wooting 60HE for most people. It provides all the competitive advantages that the Wooting 60HE does without lacking in any of the features. Where the Q1 HE shines though is in the 75% layout, which is more user-friendly and suited for most people. Another advantage to the Q1 HE is it has wireless, Bluetooth and wired connection, so you can easily swap between your devices without needing to unplug and replug the entire keyboard. Something that the Wooting does better though, based on the reviews that I've watched, is in the software. As I mentioned, this has a few issues in the software, which might be fixed in a future update. Other than that, the only advantage that the Wooting has over this is in the weight. So if you're an esports professional player and you need to take your keyboard to tournaments, I don't think you want to choose this because this is 1.7 kilograms and it's going to weigh on your back. Whereas the Wooting, I believe, is only 700 grams, which is way more convenient. But if you're not a professional gamer who takes their keyboard everywhere, I think that this is the better choice. The price of the Keychron at the time of watching this video is $220 USD. And I think that because this ticks so many boxes, that price is actually justified. So I do recommend this keyboard.